The first billionaire died inside his bunker. Yeah, inside. Not in the snow. Not in the riots. Not because the apocalypse was too strong. Meanwhile, the idiot who built the bunker was outside with a cracked skull, bad lungs, and blood freezing on his face, staring at the same steel door like the dumbest genius alive. Because in that one perfect little disaster, he realized two things at the exact same time. This wasn't rich people cosplay anymore. The world had actually kept the appointment, and the rich had known it was coming. For years, ministers, CEOs, defense contractors, and every old money freak with too much power and not enough shame had been paying him to build private doomsday bunkers before the rest of the world even knew there was a countdown. He thought they were paranoid billionaires buying themselves a deluxe bat cave with nicer lighting, so he did what any gifted cynic with zero respect for his clients would do. He sold them salvation on paper, then built them a coffin with mood lighting. And if this guy had watched even one disaster movie without falling asleep, he might have built himself a backup plan too. So do me a favor, hit subscribe before this man turns rich people panic architecture into a demolition project. He cut corners anywhere he thought he could get away with it. Cheaper reinforcement hidden behind polished concrete. Backup filters that looked perfect on paper and folded the second real pressure hit. Weak points buried so deep, nobody would ever find them. One man knew exactly where those bunkers would fail, and he was freezing to death right in front of one. Then, the world collapsed exactly on schedule. So when he ran to the nearest bunker, half dead and covered in ice, he thought he was running towards safety. Instead, he found the woman he loved already inside. Warm, dry, standing next to one of the billionaires who bought his work. She looked at him through the intercom with the kind of calm that makes your blood go cold faster than the weather. Yeah, this is the part where anyone with 2 brain cells and a Manhwa Origins playlist already knows he's about to get betrayed so hard it needs a structural report. She said the one line that turned the end of the world into something personal. He is richer, he can protect me, and he is better in bed. And then they locked the man who built every billionaire's last safe place outside to die. That should have been the end. Instead, as the cold started shutting his body down, the world split open. Walls turned into stress maps. Steel lit up with pressure lines. Pipes glowed with hidden airflow. Every sealed structure around him started showing its weak points like the apocalypse had peeled the blueprints straight out of reality. And unfortunately for everyone hiding underground, he remembered exactly where he lied. If Seo Jae-min had been bad at his job, none of this happens. Bad contractors get caught. Bad contractors leave obvious cracks. Bad contractors don't get invited back. Jaemin was worse. He was brilliant. Rich men would fly him out to mountains nobody was supposed to own, point at a wall of rock, and ask how long it would hold against fire, pressure, fallout, looters, panic, and God. He'd glance once, run the numbers in his head, and tell them exactly how deep to cut, how thick to pour, how long the filters would last, and how much it would cost to outlive their neighbors. Then he'd smile and shave the guts out of it. Not enough to fail inspection, just enough to turn their survival budget into his retirement plan. Cheaper reinforcement behind imported stone. Lower grade seals buried under cosmetic paneling. Backup scrubbers that passed inspection, looked gorgeous in the paperwork, and would have folded the second the air got ugly. That was his real talent. Not engineering. Translation, he knew exactly how to turn rich paranoia into premium branding. Because that's all bunker money really was, not survival. Separation. These people didn't want to live through the end of the world. They wanted one last chance to prove the end of the world also had a members-only section. And the clients. Oh, they were exactly the kind of people you'd expect. Ministers talking about continuity events with a straight face. Honestly, if these people looked any more suspicious, even Batman would start checking their basement. So hit the bell now, because the second this bunker fraud starts pulling threads, a whole lot of expensive lies are about to come apart. These people didn't want to survive the end of the world. They wanted priority seating. Defense creeps asking whether the public shelters would keep the outer panic occupied. One biotech chairman actually called mass casualty forecasts a market correction. That kind of human. So Jamin did what a gifted cynic does when he mistakes evil for theater. He charged more. He cared less. And he sold luxury coffins with mood lighting. The worst part is, Han Yeseo kept trying to hand him the pattern before it was too late. She didn't know load paths or pressure math, but she knew when paperwork started smelling wrong. Different shell companies kept buying the same kind of land, same law firms, same suppliers, same access to freight tunnels, utility spines, old military roads. 6 buyers on paper, 1 appetite underneath. She asked him why unrelated companies kept ordering bunkers like they were all reading the same script. Jamin laughed, kissed her forehead, and told her rich people copied fear the same way they copied watches. That was the moment he should have stopped joking, and Park Do-hyun made it even easier not to. Old friend, easy smile. Suit too expensive for a guy who called himself just the connector. He kept feeding Jamin contracts, private dinners, sealed envelopes, and handshakes that somehow always happened a week before some new crisis hit the news. Yeseo brought warnings. Do-hyun brought money. Jamin chose the one that spent, which worked beautifully, right up until the city started moving like a drill. First, the blackouts hit neighborhoods the rich only remembered when they needed drivers and cleaners. Then, fuel vanished before anyone admitted there was a shortage. Then, roads near private compounds got cleared, while the rest of the city locked itself into screaming traffic. And when the emergency broadcasts finally came on, they didn't sound scared. They sounded practiced. That's when panic stopped being the explanation. Because this wasn't chaos. It was scheduling. The power didn't die everywhere at once. It died by priority. Poor blocks first. Service tunnels second. Transit cams right after that. Like somebody was walking through the city with a checklist and turning off anything regular people might use to get ahead of the stampede. Then the emergency broadcasts kicked in, and that's when it got ugly. Because the voice on those alerts wasn't scared. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't improvising. It had that smooth, fake calm government tone people use when they've already decided how many strangers are acceptable losses. Remain indoors. Conserve heat. Await further routing. Routing. That word should have slapped him in the face right there. Jamin caught one of the broadcasts inside a half-looted pharmacy. A woman was screaming at a dead card reader. A little kid was wrapped in a coat that clearly belonged to somebody bigger. And over all of it, that polished voice kept talking like this was a weather delay and not civilization getting sorted by net worth. Same script on every screen. Same pauses. Same fake calm. You don't sound that prepared unless you practiced. And the people who were supposed to be important already vanished. The minister scheduled for live TV had been moved to a secure site before the frost warning even hit. A biotech chairman stopped answering calls 10 minutes before the first blackout. Private security convoys were suddenly everywhere, clearing roads that ambulances couldn't get through. Amazing how traffic starts cooperating the second rich people need to leave first. Yeseo saw it too. Even she stopped trying to explain it away. Why are the VIP lanes open? No answer. Why are airport feeds dark? Still nothing. Why do all the cleared roads go north? That question barely had time to land before Do-hyun pulled up in a black SUV with clean tires, warm air, and not one drop of panic on his face, which is a very funny look for a man supposedly trapped in the same apocalypse as everyone else. He rolled the window down. Get in. That was it. No, what happened? No, are you okay? No, this is insane. Just 2 thermal packs in the back, an access card on the console, and a route already loaded on the dash, like this man had been waiting for the apocalypse to start on time. That should have been enough. It wasn't, because when the sky is trying to kill you, and the roads are splitting by income bracket, survival wins a lot of arguments suspicion can't. So, Jamin got in. Yeseo got in. Do-hyun drove. And every block made the lie worse. Public shelters choking. Private gates opening. Military trucks blocking intersections that didn't protect neighborhoods. Just corridors. Then, the route on the dash tightened, and Jamin recognized it before the label even finished loading. Mountainside. Triple Seal. Hidden intake. One of his premium sites. A bunker he'd personally sold as the kind of place that can outlive a country. And the two people sitting beside him were taking him straight to it. Do-hyun didn't say a word before he did it. No warning, no sigh, no fake little betrayal speech to make himself feel complicated. He just reached down beside the driver's seat, pulled up a steel pipe, and cracked Jaemin across the skull so hard the whole world shut off mid-breath. When he came back, he was flat on his back in the snow, staring at floodlights through one good eye and trying to figure out why the cold felt wet. Then the wet kept running. Blood. It had soaked past his ear, down under his jaw, and was already starting to freeze there. He tried to sit up. One arm folded. The other shook like it had lost interest in being useful. That's when he realized what was missing. His thermal coat, his gloves, his access card, his keys. Do-hyun hadn't just dumped him out, he'd stripped him down to the exact amount of dead. A few yards ahead, the bunker entrance was lit up like some obscene luxury hotel for people who thought money should still work after civilization didn't. Men in white cold weather gear were hauling crates through the outer seal. Quick, calm, efficient, no panic anywhere. This wasn't a rescue. It was private boarding for people who got the apocalypse itinerary early. He dragged himself forward anyway. Palm, knee, slip. Palm, knee, blood. The steel threshold was right there, close enough to see, far enough to be a joke. Then, Yeseo stood inside the inner glass wall in a clean coat with dry hair and steady hands, like Winter had been told not to touch her. Beside her was one of the buyers, Assemblyman Choi Min-suk. Jaemin knew that face, smiling on television, talking about sacrifice, pricing it for other people. And behind them, warm light. Real warm light. Not survival. Comfort. Jaemin hit the glass. Or tried to. What actually happened was uglier. He stumbled into it shoulder first, left a blood smear, then slid half a step down like the building itself was rejecting him. Yeseo looked at him. No gasp, no breakdown, no last-second guilt. That was the first truly evil part. She looked prepared. Behind him, the outer blast door started closing. Slow, heavy, certain. Jaemin twisted, lurched for it, and slammed both hands against the steel. The door didn't care. It kept moving with that rich machine confidence, like it had already checked his bank balance and found a reason to keep going. By the time he turned back, Do-hyun was inside. Of course he was. He stepped through the seal, handed one of the guards Jaemin's access card without even looking at him, then moved to Yeseo's side like this had been his seat the whole time. Coward, broker, human forwarding address. Jaemin pressed himself up against the glass, breath breaking apart in front of him. Yeseo. The intercom clicked on. Not him. Her. Don't dress this up like heartbreak. You were already dead. I just refuse to die next to you, she said. Flat, clean, almost bored. Like she'd already had this argument in her own head and won it days ago. Jaemin stared at her, then at Do-hyun, then at Choi, who had actually taken one small step back from the glass so Jaemin's blood wouldn't touch his shoes. That one detail said more than any speech ever could. I built this place. Jaemin managed. It came out rough and torn, like his throat was trying to freeze around the words. Yeseo nodded once. I know. No softness, no denial, no lie to make it easier. Just that. I know. His hand dragged down the glass, leaving 5 red lines. Then, why? Small word, barely alive. Yeseo stepped closer, and somehow that made it worse. He could see his own wrecked face reflected over hers. Blood, snow, one eye failing, mouth shaking, and she still looked calm. Not because she didn't understand what she was doing, because she did. I didn't leave you for him, she said. A quick glance toward Choi, not affectionate, transactional. Then her eyes came back to Jaemin. I left you for the side of the door that closes. Nothing hit him right away. That was the ugly part. The pain in his head was still there. The cold was still there. The blood was still there. But that line went in deeper and landed slower. Like his body needed a second to understand he'd just been replaced by a locking mechanism. Do-hyun looked away first. Of course he did. Men like him can help bury you, sure. They just can't watch the dirt hit. Then the final seal engaged. A violent burst of pressure slammed Jamin backward off the door and into the snow. His head bounced once. Light broke. Sound stretched out. The bunker turned into red smears and white noise. He should have died there. Honestly, he almost did, but as the cold pushed deeper and the blood in his eye turned the whole mountain into a blinking mess, the steel in front of him stopped looking solid. Lines started showing through it. Stress lines, seal seams, pressure routes, hidden air channels running under the door like glowing veins. The whole bunker started giving up secrets, and deep inside the structure that had just chosen money over him, one lower seal flashed wrong. Then again, something in his broken head understood it instantly. The bunker wasn't safe, and now he could see exactly where it would start to fail. Yet the way the steel groaned felt wrong. Not weak, wrong, like the bunker was hiding a lie even its own builder never put there. But if that had been the only thing he learned, this story gets a lot shorter. Jamin shoved himself up on one arm, looked at the lower seal one more time, and the whole entrance cracked open in his head. Not the steel stayed shut, smug and expensive. What changed was everything under it. Stress marks crawled through the concrete. Pressure lines lit up behind the door. Heat bled through buried channels under the snow. Emergency routes, intake runs, bypass seams, dead space between the outer shell and the mountain. Every lie he'd poured into that place started showing itself at once. For maybe 2 seconds, he saw the bunker cleaner half dead in the snow than he ever did paid, sober, and standing in front of the original plans. Then his skull collected the bill. Pain smashed through him so hard, his vision jumped. Blood poured out of his nose. Something warm slipped from his ear and turned cold on his neck almost immediately. One eye went white and useless. The glowing lines doubled, split, stacked over each other, and suddenly the door had 3 weak points instead of 1. So no, this wasn't some neat little upgrade. His brain had just broken in a useful direction. He tried to crawl and lost time doing it. Actual time. 1 second, his palm was on the ice. Next second, he was face down farther downhill with gravel jammed under his nails and no memory of moving. That was the price. Every answer took something with it. Another flash hit him. This time, the lines didn't stop at the bunker. They dropped under the mountain and ran south through older concrete, municipal concrete, cheap stuff, fast poured, under reinforced, already carrying more load than it should. Jamin froze. There was a public shelter down there. Of course, there was, because rich people never build a private ending without some cheaper box nearby full of civilians they can route the ugly parts through. Heat loss, overflow, air balance, human leftovers. Same scam as always, just buried deeper. He got to his feet badly and started downhill. Every few steps, his sight cut out and came back wrong. A retaining wall went transparent. A buried pipe lit up under his boots. Even the words in his head wouldn't stay put. Intake, seal, pressure, then blank space where the next thought should have been. By the time he reached the shelter entrance, his hands were shaking so hard he missed the rail twice. Inside, it was packed. Families shoulder to shoulder. Kids sleeping in winter coats that didn't fit. Old people coughing into scarves. Volunteers repeating the same calm little script they'd been given, like reading it enough times might make it true. Stay inside. Keep calm. Help is coming. Jamin looked up at the ceiling vents and saw the air moving the wrong way. The shelter wasn't being fed, it was being drained. This wasn't a system failure. It was a harvest. And the sick part, nobody in that room knew they were already paying for shelter with their lungs. A boy in a school blazer was asleep sitting up, chin on his chest, breathing through his mouth like his body had given up waiting for enough air to come through his nose. A woman kept fanning a baby with a bus timetable like paper could manufacture oxygen. Near the back, an old man was coughing so hard 2 volunteers were telling him to calm down, which is exactly the kind of genius advice you get from people who still think this is a weather problem. Above them, the vent kept pulling. Not weak, hungry. Jamin looked again, and the concrete peeled open in his head. Blue pressure lines dropped under the floor. 1 branch fed the room. 3 thicker branches kept going. down, deeper, cleaner, straight into the mountain. That's when it clicked. This shelter wasn't failing by accident. It was being milked. The public wasn't being kept alive. They were being stacked in one place, kept calm, and skimmed for breathable air, while the people with real money sat deeper underground, pretending they'd survived on merit. Which, yeah, is exactly the kind of move rich people would call continuity planning, right before they suffocated a bus driver's kid to keep a wine collector comfortable. A man in an orange municipal vest spotted Jamin staring at the vent map and rushed over clutching a clipboard like paperwork could stop people from suffocating. You know systems. Jamin had blood dried under one ear, one eye half blind, and both hands shaking like bad wiring. Apparently that counted as a certification now. The air's being rerouted. The man didn't ask how, didn't ask who he was, didn't even turn toward the people gasping behind him. He just grabbed Jamin by the sleeve. Then, fix it. We've got protocol. Of course he did. Somewhere overhead, people were getting robbed, breath by breath, and this clown still believed the word protocol was a spell. The intake corridor was a concrete throat behind a locked panel and a bad smell. Jamin got one look at it and hated how familiar it felt. Pressure shunt tucked behind maintenance housing. Public feed throttled down. Private line prioritized. Different layout. Same scam. He'd built cousins of this thing for men who called mass death an inconvenience and asked whether panic could be acoustically isolated. So when the full routing flare hit, the guilt didn't arrive clean. It hit like recognition. There, he said, pointing at the bypass wheel. If I close that, air should kick back into the room. Should? The vest guy snapped. Jamin didn't answer. Because should was what people like him used right before other people died. He reached for the wheel. His vision split sideways. He grabbed again. Wrong place. Instead of the bypass, his hand slammed the relief latch. The chamber exploded in steam. Metal screamed. Lights blew out. Somebody outside started screaming first. Then everybody else joined in, because darkness plus bad air turns a crowd into an animal fast. The vest guy stumbled back and stared at Jamin like he'd just personally invented suffocation. What did you do? Fair question, because for one beautiful, miserable second, So Jamin was not a genius with a broken gift. He was just the same greedy idiot who'd made his fortune shaving safety margins and had now walked into a dying shelter and made it worse. Then the lines came back. Harder, meaner, through the steam, through the blood pounding in his skull. He saw the whole ugly truth at once. You couldn't save this room by fixing one bypass. The system was built to steal. Close one route and the draw would jump somewhere else. Neat repair was a lie for people who still respected the machine. So he stopped trying to repair it and decided to hurt it. He ripped a fire axe from the emergency cabinet, staggered to the intake housing, and brought it down hard enough to crack the regulator clean through. One hit, 2, 3. On the fourth, the buried pressure lines under the floor jerked out of rhythm. The vents coughed. Then the room behind him pulled one long, ugly breath. Real air, cold air. Panicked people don't thank God first when oxygen comes back. They gasp. Then, somewhere deep below the shelter, something expensive started choking. And on the far wall, under 20 years of dust and neglect, a maintenance radio crackled to life. The radio coughed once. Then her voice came through. Jamin, that was it. No panic, no shock, no little breathy, you're alive. Just his name, flat, warm, annoyingly intact. Like him surviving had already been priced in. The whole shelter went quiet behind him, even the kids. That's how ugly the moment was. One voice on that radio, and everybody in the room understood the truth all at once. The rich weren't hidden. They were connected. Jamin pressed his hand to the wall beside the radio. Blood smeared across old paint. You sound comfortable. Static. Then her again. We have a pressure problem. Of course, not are you hurt. Not what happened up there. Just the complaint desk calling from underground. What did you do? She asked. Jamin looked at the cracked regulator, the axe on the floor, the people behind him dragging air into their lungs like they'd stolen it back fair and square. I fixed the public room. A beat, then colder. Fix the pressure, Jamin. Or die proving me right. Behind her, somebody started coughing. Not a clean little throat clear, real choking, wet, panicked. Another voice cut in over the line, angry first, then scared when the sentence ran out of air. Do-in, already breaking. Good. Jamin leaned into the radio. You picked the wrong bunker. Silence. Then, what does that mean? It means Choi's unit has a weak lower pressure seal. He wiped blood off his mouth with the back of his wrist. West collar, under the service spine. I shaved the material grade and signed it off anyway. Now, the silence hit harder. Because she knew exactly which job he meant. He refused the delay, Jamin said. Remember that? He said the press conference date mattered more than cure time. Whole country could burn, but God forbid his podium got rescheduled. Metal slammed somewhere under her side of the mountain. Somebody shouted for backup air, and then Do-hyun again, stripped all the way down to his real self. Tell him we can pay him. The line cut sideways in static. Yeseo came back fast, like she wanted his voice buried before it made her side sound as pathetic as it was. You're trying to scare me. No, Jamin said. I'm telling you what you bought. Her next breath was small, not guilty, annoyed, like this was rude. Classic. Rich people love honesty right up until it starts sounding like a Manhwa Origins autopsy on their life choices. Like people above ground were supposed to die quietly and stop making admin harder. We did what we had to do, she said. The ones who prepared were always going to survive. There it was. Not love, not regret, just elitism with good posture. Jamin looked down, and the broken lines lit up again behind his eye. Ducts, valves, buried channels, pressure routes running through the mountain like veins in something rotten. How many people knew? He asked. Nothing. Not right away. Just alarms, coughing, a man somewhere below, begging somebody to open something. Jamin counted in his head. 1, 2, half a beat. That half beat told him everything. This wasn't a panic shelter for a few rich pigs with good timing. This was planned, measured, built to let one side of the mountain breathe through the other side's throat. Jamin, listen, she said. He ricked the radio wire straight out of the wall. Silence dropped hard. And under that silence, beneath the vents, beneath the concrete, beneath every lie he'd ever signed his name to. Not a bunker network, a machine. And every pipe in it was still stealing. He ripped the radio out of the wall, and the silence that followed should have felt good. It didn't, because Yeseo choking on her own good decision. Do-hyun finally learning that premium access still comes with consequences. Great. Beautiful. Love that for them. But the second the line went dead, Jamin saw the floor light up again. And the whole revenge plot got smaller. The shelter lines weren't just feeding bunkers, they were feeding something under the bunkers. That was the first bad part. The second bad part was worse. He recognized the logic, not the exact layout, not the exact materials. He'd never poured this concrete, never signed these routes, never built some smiling parasite for this section of the scam. But he knew the thinking. Same lazy efficiency. Same hidden theft. Same little contractor sin, where the ugly part gets buried behind something expensive and everyone pretends that counts as safety. Nobody spots a lie faster than the guy who used to sell them. Jamin stared harder. One route skimmed air off the public shelter. Another bled pressure out of Choi's unit. Another bypassed both and dropped deeper into old concrete with a kind of confidence that made his skin crawl. That's when it hit him. The billionaires thought they bought the whole system. What they actually bought was the luxury demo, the polished version, the rich people version, the luxury waiting room for idiots who thought exclusivity and survival were the same thing. All that imported stone, mood lighting, biometric locks, private wine storage, just expensive trim wrapped around a deeper system they weren't important enough to see. And that, honestly, was the funniest part. These people sold out the world for reserved seating, and they still ended up as customers. Not kings, not architects. Customers. System voice, deep route pressure shift detected. The voice came through the walls, so faint it barely sounded modern. Not like an alert, like a buried habit. Like this thing had been under the mountain long before the panic, long before the shell companies, maybe long before Jamin ever told himself he was just smarter than everyone else in the room. A volunteer grabbed his sleeve. Is the air stable now? Jamin looked at the vent, looked at the floor, looked at the deeper routes still pulling like the whole city was one big throat, clearing itself for somebody important. And yeah, the answer was ugly. The shelter had air back. For now. But this system wasn't built to stop stealing because one bleeding contractor got pissed off and swung an axe. It would reroute, adapt, pull from somewhere else. That's what machines like this do. That's what people like him do too, apparently. His head throbbed so hard his vision doubled. Blood crawled warm out of his nose, then turned cold before it hit his lip. The deeper route flashed again, and this time, it wasn't just a line. It was an invitation, or a dare. Either somebody found his bunkers, studied every shortcut he ever buried, and copied the exact way he cheated. Or somebody taught him how to think like this before he ever called it talent. That thought landed meaner than the pipe. Because getting betrayed by a woman and a coward? Painful. Finding out you might have spent years as some hidden monster's unpaid apprentice? That sticks. Jamin pulled free of the volunteer, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and started walking. Not uphill, not back to Choi's bunker, past all of it. Because the bunkers were never the whole lie. They were just the part the rich were allowed to buy. And somewhere under the shelters, under the mountain, under every sealed door and stolen lungful of air, something down there already cheated the way he did.
Now, if something under this mountain learned to cheat the way he did, then one of three things was true. Either it copied him, it made him, or just like you, it hit that subscribe button and gave a like to see what happens next. Nah, that won't work. Look, if you made it this far, it really means a lot to me. Your engagement and support helps me make more content like this, including part 2s. Subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.
The air came back for 11 minutes. Yi Min counted them, because counting was the only thing his broken head could still do cleanly. And because he wanted to be wrong. He wasn't. At minute 12, the vents up near the ceiling made a sound he knew too well. A soft mechanical sigh, like a machine remembering it had a job to do. And then the cold, clean air that had filled the shelter. After he cracked, the regulator started thinning again. He'd cut off one throat. The system had simply grown another. The volunteer in the orange vest was still standing next to him. Still holding that clipboard like it was a holy relic. Still not understanding that paperwork had never once saved a single person in the history of the world. He looked at Yi Min with the specific hope of a man who wanted someone else to be in charge of the dying. "It's working," the volunteer said. "Right, they're breathing better." "They were," Yi Min said. He didn't dress it up. There wasn't time, and he'd spent his whole life dressing things up. And look where that had gotten everyone. Behind the polished concrete of his career was a mountain full of people, paying for his lies with their lungs. He was done making things sound nicer than they were. The lines flared behind his eyes again, and this time it hurt less, which scared him more. Because pain was the only thing keeping him honest about how much this was costing him. Blood was crusted stiff along his jaw now, frozen and then half-thawed by the shelter's dying warmth. His right eye still worked. His left came and went like a bad bulb. But when the sight came, oh, when it came, the whole shelter turned into a diagram of its own murder. The vents weren't the problem. The vents were the mouth. The problem was 3 floors below the mouth, where the deep roots he'd glimpsed earlier had rebalanced themselves, opening a secondary draw that pulled air out of this room, through a channel nobody in this shelter would ever find, because it ran behind a maintenance wall that his own industry had taught contractors to build too thick to question. He knew that wall, not this specific one, but its cousins. He'd specified walls exactly like it, for exactly this reason. In bunkers, he'd been paid handsomely to make prettier than they were safe. "How many people are in here?" Yi Min said. The volunteer blinked. We stopped counting at 400. There's more in the East Hall. 400 people, and a machine underneath them, treating their breathing like a resource to be mined. And somewhere below all of it, the thing that had built the machine was doing the arithmetic on how many of them it could afford to keep alive. That was when the boy tugged his sleeve. Yi Min looked down. It was the kid in the school blazer, the one he'd clocked earlier, sleeping upright with his chin on his chest, mouth open, breathing like his body had already filed a complaint. Except now he was awake and standing, and he'd walked all the way across a packed shelter floor on legs that clearly didn't want to hold him, to grab the sleeve of the one adult in the room who looked worse than everyone else. "You did the thing with the axe?" the boy said. I did the thing with the axe. My mom said don't bother the man with the blood on him. The kid said this with the total seriousness of someone reporting a rule he had every intention of breaking. But you fixed the air, so I wanted to say thanks before. Before what? The boy shrugged, and it was the worst shrug Yi-min had ever seen. Because it wasn't a kid's careless shrug. It was the shrug of someone who'd already done the math on his own chances, and was just being polite about it. Before it stops working again. It's already getting hard again, I can tell. I've got the thing, he tapped his own chest. The lungs thing, so I feel it first. Asthma, or something close enough that it didn't matter. In a room where the oxygen was being skimmed a little at a time. The kid with the compromised lungs was the canary. He would feel every drop in the air before anyone else. He would panic first, tire first, and fade first. He was, in every sense that mattered to a building, the first point of failure, and he just walked across the room to thank the man who built systems exactly like the one killing him. What's your name? Yi-min said. He didn't know why he asked. He'd spent years not asking people their names, because names made numbers into people, and people were harder to overcharge. Min-jun, Yi-min crouched, which cost him. The room tilted, went white at the edges, then came back. Up close, the kid's lips had the faint blue tint that told you exactly how much time the arithmetic had left him. Where's your mom right now? Min-jun pointed. Near the far wall, a woman was fanning a baby with a folded bus timetable. The same woman from before, and the baby in her arms wasn't hers. Yi-min realized, because Min-jun's mother was fanning someone else's child, while her own son walked across a suffocating room to say thank you to a stranger. That detail went in somewhere under his ribs and stayed there. Okay, Yi-min said. Now, Min-jun, I need you to do something for me, and it's going to sound stupid. I'm good at stupid. Yeah, me too. Go sit by the door we came in through. The big one. The air moves best right there, near the seal, because seals leak, and a leaky seal is the best friend you've got right now. That was true. And it was also him buying the kid minutes with the one currency he had left, which was knowing exactly where a building failed. Sit there, breathe slow. Don't be a hero, and give your spot to somebody. Just this once, be selfish. Can you do that? Min-jun considered this with great gravity. My mom says being selfish is bad. Your mom's right about almost everything. She's wrong about this one thing for the next few hours. Now go. The kid went, slow and careful, with one hand trailing the wall, and Yi-min watched him the whole way, and hated, with a purity he hadn't felt about anything in years, every single beautiful brochure he'd ever signed his name to. Then he turned to the volunteer. I need the deepest access point in this building. Maintenance, drainage, an old service stair, anything that goes down instead of along. And I need it now. Because whatever I did with the axe bought this room maybe an hour, and I need to go break something that actually matters. The volunteer stared at him. You want to go down. People are trying to get up. There's a whole crowd at the North Stair trying to. The people at the North Stair are going to suffocate politely in a line, Yi-min said. I'm going to go find the machine that's doing it to them, and I'm going to make it choke instead. Where is the access point? And here's the part that told Yi-min everything about how this shelter had been set up. Because the volunteer hesitated, and it wasn't the hesitation of a man who didn't know. It was the hesitation of a man who'd been told not to say. There's a sealed stair, the volunteer said slowly. Behind the pump room. We were told it was decommissioned. Flooded, they said. Do not open, they said. It's got a municipal lock on it and everything. Who told you? The volunteer looked at his clipboard like it might answer for him. The site coordinator, Mr. Beek. He's the one who's been running the shelter protocol since the alerts started. He had the routing sheets. He knew where everyone should go. Of course he did. Somebody always knew where everyone should go. That was the whole scam, top to bottom. From the ministers in Part 1's dinners, down to a man with a clipboard in a dying basement. Somebody who knew the routing. Somebody who called the hurting of the desperate a protocol, and said the word like it meant safety instead of scheduling. Where's Mr. Beek now? Yi-min asked. Down in the pump room. He said he was managing pressure. He's got the only key to the sealed stair. He said opening it would flood the whole lower level and kill us all. The volunteer swallowed. He seemed really sure about that. I bet he did. Yi-min was already moving. Because a flooded stair doesn't need a lock. Water doesn't respect a padlock. You don't put a municipal lock on a stairwell to keep the water in. You put it there to keep the people out. Mr. Beek had locked a door and told 400 people a story about why they should be grateful it was locked. And that, more than anything, more than Yesio's flat voice on the intercom, more than Du-hyen's pipe across his skull, was the thing that made Yi-min want to take a building apart with his bare hands. Because he recognized it, it was his move. It was the exact shape of the lie he'd built his whole life on. Just cheaper, just meaner, and closer to the ground. The pump room was down a corridor that stank of standing water and hot electronics. And Mr. Beek was exactly what Yi-min expected, which was to say he was wearing a municipal jacket, 2 grades too official for a basement, and he had the specific calm of a man who who decided which people were acceptable losses, and made peace with being one of the survivors. He looked up when Yi Min came in, took in the blood, the ruined eye, the axe still in one hand, and instead of alarm, his face did something worse. It relaxed because a man in Yi Min's condition wasn't a threat. A man in Yi Min's condition was a problem that would solve itself soon. "You shouldn't be down here," Beek said. "It's not safe. I'm managing a very delicate pressure situation, and I can't have people." "You've got a routing sheet," Yi Min said. "I want to see it." "That's confidential municipal." Yi Min put the axe head against the pump room's main control panel, not swinging, just resting it there, letting the man do his own math about what a swing would do to his delicate pressure situation. "I built these," he said quietly. "Bunkers, shelters, the ones with the pretty walls and the ugly guts. I know exactly what a routing sheet looks like, when it's really a harvest schedule dressed up as an evacuation plan. So show me, or I start conducting my own inspection with this. And I promise you my inspection is very thorough and very fast." Beek's calm cracked just at the corner. "You don't understand the situation. The lower levels have to be prioritized. There are people down there who paid," Yi Min said. "There are people down there who paid. Say it right." And Beek, God help him, said the thing that men like him always say, the thing that Choi would have said, the thing that a biotech chairman had once said, calling a mass casualty, forecast a market correction, the thing that was the whole rotten heart of every door that closes. "The people below made arrangements," Beek said. "The people up here didn't. That's not cruelty. That's just accounting." Yi Min looked at this man, at his clean jacket, and his clipboard cousin, and his terrible arithmetic, and he thought about Minjun sitting by the leaky seal, breathing slow like a good boy, giving up his selflessness for a few hours, because a stranger asked him to. He didn't hit him, not yet. Beek wasn't worth the swing, and dead men don't hand over keys. "Give me the key to the stair," Yi Min said, "and the routing sheet, and I'll let you keep pretending you're managing pressure. Or don't, and I'll open that stair the way I open everything, which is by finding the exact place it was built to fail." "And Mr. Beek," he leaned in, close enough that the man could see there was nothing behind his eyes anymore that could be reasoned with. "I already know where it fails. I can see it from here." That last part was true, and it landed, because Beek had spent his whole career trusting that the systems he administered were solid. And now a bleeding man with an axe was telling him he could see the bones of the building through the walls, and some animal part of Beek's brain believed it. He gave up the key. Yi Min took the routing sheet folded in the man's jacket pocket, and unfolded it under the pump room's red emergency light. And what he saw made the 11 minutes of clean air feel like a joke somebody had told at a funeral. Because the routing sheet wasn't a plan for this shelter. It was a plan for 6 shelters, 6 public buildings all across the city, all funneling their crowds into pretty holding rooms with reversed vents, all connected by the same deep roots, down into the same place under the same mountain. 6 buyers on paper, 1 appetite underneath. Yesio had seen it in the land deals, back when it was just paperwork that smelled wrong, back when he'd kissed her forehead and told her rich people copied fear like they copied watches. She'd been right. He'd been the joke. And at the bottom of the routing sheet, in the corner, was a stamp. Not a company logo, not a shell corporation, an old municipal seal, the kind that went out of use decades ago, worn and half-legible, from a civil defense office that officially hadn't existed since before Yi Min was born. Somebody had built this machine a long, long time ago, and somebody had spent the years since teaching a whole industry how to feed it without knowing they were feeding it, teaching contractors where to make walls too thick to question, teaching them how to hide a harvest behind a brochure, teaching them to think that shaving a safety margin was just good business, helping them think like this before they ever called it talent. Yi Min stood very still in the red light, with the key in one hand and the sheet in the other, and the sight flared one more time, unbidden, and dropped the whole picture into his skull at once. 6 shelters, 1 machine, a stamp older than any of the men who'd betrayed him, and a stairwell behind him that a frightened administrator had been ordered to keep locked, because whatever was down there, they didn't want the cattle wandering into it. The stair wasn't flooded. He could see the airflow moving up it, dry and steady, going somewhere that breathed. He put the key in his pocket, picked up the axe, and behind him, in the doorway, he heard the small, careful footsteps of someone who should not have followed him down here. "You said sit by the door," Minjun said, hovering at the threshold, one hand on the frame, lips bluer than before. "But my mom moved us, and now she can't find me, and I got scared, and I saw you come this way, and..." He stopped, breathing too hard for the sentence. "What's down the stairs?" And Yi Min, who had spent his whole life knowing exactly where every structure would fail, looked at the one small person he'd told to be selfish, standing in the doorway of the one place in the building he could not promise was safe. And for the first time in the entire apocalypse, he did not know the answer. "Nothing good," Yi Min said. "That's what's down the stairs." It was the most honest thing he'd said to anyone in years, and he watched it fail to land on a 9-year-old. Because kids that age don't hear nothing good. They hear an adult being dramatic, and they file it next to "don't run with scissors," and eat your vegetables. But you're going down, Minjun said. I'm different. How? Because I helped build the thing that's killing you. And I owe a debt I can't ever pay, so I'm going to go break something instead. He didn't say that. Instead, he crouched again, slower this time, because the room kept trying to spin, and he took the folded routing sheet and pressed it into the kid's hands. You want to help me? Minjun nodded, too eager, the way kids do when an adult finally treats them like they matter. Then this is the most important job in the whole building. Yimin tapped the sheet. You take this back up. You find the man in the orange vest, the one with the clipboard. You give it to him, and you tell him exactly. 6 shelters, 1 machine, and the pump room key is with me. Can you say that back? 6 shelters, 1 machine, the key's with you. The kid's eyes were huge. What's it mean? It means the man in the vest gets to stop trusting the routing sheet. Yi Min stood. His left eye came back online, then quit again, and in the half-second of double vision, he saw the stairwell behind Minjun light up with airflow, dry and steady, and moving down into something that had no business breathing in a building this dead. Go slow, hand on the wall, and Minjun. He made himself say it. Find your mom. Don't come back down here, I mean it. The kid went, and Yi Min told himself he'd bought the boy time and safety in the same move. Sent him up and away from the thing under the mountain, and he almost believed it, which was its own kind of lie, the kind he was very, very good at. Then he turned the key in the municipal lock, and the sealed stair swung open onto a stairwell that was not flooded, had never been flooded, and led down into a red dark that hummed. The humming was the first wrong thing, not the hum of the shelter's dying HVAC, not the labored wheeze of pumps trying to manage a pressure situation that didn't exist. This was lower, older, the sound of something large and patient, that had been running for a very long time, and expected to run for a very long time more. It came up the stairs like breath. Yi Min went down. Every few steps his sight flickered, and painted the walls, and the deeper he went the less the walls looked like anything he'd ever specified. Up top it had been familiar, his industry's sins, the too thick maintenance walls, the throttled feeds, the cosmetic paneling over cheap seals. But down here the bones changed. The concrete got older and somehow better, poured with a care nobody used anymore. Reinforced in patterns, his sight lit up, and then couldn't finish reading, like a sentence in a language he half recognized. He'd cheated his whole life. He knew what cheating looked like in a structure. The little compromises, the buried shortcuts. This place had none of them. This place had been built by someone who did not cut corners, because they were not building to a budget. They were building to last past everyone. That was scarier than any bunker fraud. A cheap thing fails, and Yi Min had made a fortune on cheap things that fail. But a thing built to outlast you doesn't fail. It just waits for you to. 20 steps down, the stairwell opened into a chamber, and Yi Min stopped, because for one long moment, the sight and his actual eyes agreed on what they were seeing, and both of them wished they hadn't. It was a lung, not literally, but that was the only word his broken head could reach for. A vast low room, the ceiling lost in the dark, and running through it in every direction were the deep roots he'd been seeing through walls for the last hour. Except here they weren't glowing lines in his damaged sight. They were real, physical, enormous, ribbed conduits the width of subway tunnels. And they moved slowly, expanding and contracting with a hum, pulling air down from 6 shelters across a dying city, and pushing it somewhere deeper, and pulling and pushing in and out, patient as a sleeping animal. The billionaires thought they'd bought the whole system. Choi and his weak West collar seal. Yesio standing warm behind glass. All of them sitting in their luxury waiting room thinking they'd survived on merit. And this was the thing under their feet the whole time. The thing they weren't important enough to be shown. Breathing the cities pour into itself. So the members-only section stayed comfortable. And Yi Min understood, standing there, that he could not fix this. There was no regulator to crack. There was no bypass wheel to close. This was not a system with a flaw he could exploit. This was the flaw. The whole thing was the shortcut. Industrial scale yet ancient. And it had been designed by someone who thought exactly the way he thought. Except they'd never had a Minjun tug their sleeve. So he did the only thing a man like him could do when he couldn't fix something. He looked for where to hurt it. The sight came when he called it now. And it came hard. And the price came with it. Blood ran fresh from his nose. And he tasted copper. And his left eye went fully dark and stayed dark. And he thought distantly that he was spending organs on this, that every answer took a piece of him he wasn't getting back. But the chamber lit up in his good eye, and the map assembled itself. And there, where 3 of the great breathing conduits fed into a central junction, there was a pressure node, a convergence, the one place in this cathedral of theft where all the roots had to pass through the same throat. You couldn't kill a lung by pinching one tube, but a central junction, overpressured and cascading, the way he'd once watched a badly specified bunker fold in on itself. In a test he'd falsified the results of. That could take the whole thing down. He knew how to overpressure it. He knew exactly because overpressuring a junction was the kind of failure he'd spent a career designing away from, which meant he'd spent a career learning precisely how to cause it. This was the trap, not one he was walking into, one he was going to build. He crossed to the junction, and his hands, shaking, blood-slick, started doing the work they were made for, except backwards, for once building toward collapse instead of away from it. And the counterweight of it steadied something in him that had been loose since the door closed on his face. For the first time since the snow, Seo Yi-min was 3 steps ahead of something. Then the hum changed, and a voice came out of the walls. Not the flat municipal alert voice from the broadcasts, not Yesio's cold intercom. This was older, threaded through the whole chamber. Coming from everywhere the conduits ran, and it was calm in a way that made the administrator upstairs look hysterical. "You found the throat," it said. "Most of them find the walls and stop. You went for the throat. Yi-min didn't stop working. You built this. I designed the principle. The city built the rest, over decades, without ever knowing it was one thing. That was the elegance. 6 shelters, 6 budgets, 6 administrators who each thought they ran a shelter." Then a pause, and the pause had something almost like warmth in it, which was the most horrifying thing yet. "You understand elegance like that? You've built cousins of it your whole career. Every wall you made too thick to question. Every seal you hid behind pretty stone. You've been doing my work and calling it fraud." There it was, the curiosity engine paying out. Copied him, made him, or something worse. And the answer, sliding into place in his ruined skull, was worse than all 3. Because it wasn't that the machine had copied him or built him. It was that he and the machine had learned the same lesson from the same world, independently, and the machine had just done it first and bigger, and without ever once feeling bad about it. He wasn't its apprentice. He wasn't its creator. He was its proof of concept, living proof that if you build a world where shaving a safety margin is just good business, it will grow men who think like this on its own, the way rot grows in the exact places you'd expect. "I'm not doing your work," Yi-min said. "Not anymore." His hands moved faster. The junction groaned. The pressure was building where he wanted it. The cascade beginning to load. The whole ancient, elegant machine starting, for the first time in its long, patient life, to develop a flaw at its center. "You'll kill them," the voice said, and now it wasn't warm. Now it was the thing men like Beek and Choi always reached for last. The accusation dressed up as concern. "Collapse the junction, and the shelters lose all air routing at once. Not skimmed, gone. 400 people in your shelter alone. The boy you sent upstairs. You want to be different from me. Killing 400 to spite one machine is not different. It's just louder." And Yi-min's hands stopped, because that was the horror of the trap he was building. The machine was skimming them slowly. He could stop the skim by killing the whole system, but a whole system dying all at once didn't gently return air to 400 people. It ripped the routing out from under 6 buildings at the same time. The slow theft was survivable for hours. The sudden collapse was not survivable at all. The machine had built a system where the only way to stop it hurting people slowly was to hurt them all at once, which was, Yi-min realized, the most his move thing of all. Make sure the honest choice and the monstrous choice are the same choice. Make sure the man with the axe becomes the killer the second he swings. He stood over the loaded junction with blood running down his dead eye, and he understood. He'd been outbuilt by something that had a head start of decades, and no conscience to slow it down. "There's a third way," the voice said, gentle again. "You know these systems better than anyone alive up there. Stop trying to break me. Manage me. Route the skim smarter. Keep the shelters alive longer. Keep the members comfortable. Take your seat at the junction where you belong. You'd be good at it. You've been auditioning for it your whole life." That was the real offer. Not a threat, a job. The machine wasn't trying to kill him. It was trying to hire him. And Yi-min had never once in his life turned down the wrong job. Easy smiles, sealed envelopes, contracts that always showed up a week before a crisis. The machine had done its homework. It knew he'd always said yes. Come sit on the side of the door that closes. Be the one who does the arithmetic. Be comfortable. For half a second, part of him wanted it. The part that had said yes to Do Hyun every time. The part that shaved the margins and cashed the checks. Standing at the throat of the machine, he could feel how easy it would be, how natural, how much it would just be more of the same thing he'd always done. And then he heard the footsteps on the stairs. Small, careful, one hand on the wall. 6 shelters, Minjun's voice said, thin and breathless from the dark of the stairwell. "One machine. I told the vest man, he believed me." In a wet, weak, struggling breath. "I couldn't find my mom, so I came back to help you instead. Being selfish didn't work." He'd told the boy to go up, to be selfish, to find his mother, and stay away from the thing under the mountain. And the boy, because Yi-min had spent one honest hour treating him like he mattered, had done the exact opposite, had come back down into the one place his failing lungs could least afford, to help the bleeding stranger who'd been kind to him once. The machine had asked Yi-min to prove he was different by not killing 400 people. But the difference had just walked down the stairs on its own, blue-lipped and loyal, and it was standing between Yi-min and the easy job at the throat. And it was looking at him, the way nobody had looked at him in his entire life, which was like he was a good man. "Kid," Yi-min said, and his voice broke on the word. "I told you to go up." "I know." Min-jun smiled, and it was the worst smile in the world because it was real. "But you looked like you needed help. And my mom says," he stopped, coughed but kept his feet. "My mom says the people who need help the most are the ones who tell you they don't." The machine hummed, patient, waiting for its answer. And Yi-min looked down at the loaded junction, and up at the boy, and he finally understood what the third way actually was. The one the machine hadn't offered, because the machine couldn't imagine it. He knew where every structure failed. He'd been seeing it all night, but he'd been looking at the whole machine. The 6 shelters, the 400, the impossible arithmetic. He hadn't looked closely at the one thing right in front of him. He looked now, he called the sight, and it cost him the last of the blood he had to spare. And the chamber whited out and came back. And the junction lit up not as a thing to collapse, but as a thing to redirect. Not kill the lung, reverse one chamber of it, push the skim backward through a single conduit, just one, the one that fed his shelter, and give 400 people real air for real this time, at the cost of overpressuring exactly one section of the ancient machine, one throat instead of all of them. It would work, he could see it. It would save the 400, but the section that overpressured, the conduit that would rupture when he forced the reversal, ran directly up the sealed stairwell. The stairwell Min-jun was standing in. Yi-min saw it all at once, the way he saw everything now, laid out in his one working eye like a blueprint drawn in blood. Reverse the conduit. 400 people breathe. The machine loses a lung, and the whole elegant patient system starts to unravel from the throat outward, because you cannot skim a city when one of your 6 intakes is screaming air back the wrong way. Min-jun, go up. All the way up right now, and this time you don't get to come back. Yi-min was already moving toward the gap, toward the spot his sight had lit red, the exact place the wall would blow. He'd finally found a structure whose failure point he could stand in on purpose. If he took the rupture with his own body, the stair would clear. The kid would live. The air comes back for everybody. Your mom, the baby she's fanning, but only if you're not in here. Go. Min-jun backed up 2 steps, stopped, and Yi-min made the mistake of turning to start the reversal, because a man who spent his whole life reading buildings forgets that the most dangerous structure in any room is a 9-year-old who's decided he loves you. You're going to stand in it, Min-jun said behind him, with the calm of the canary who felt the air go wrong before anyone else. The broken part, so it doesn't come up the stairs. You don't come back if you do that. Go up the stairs, Min-jun. You need help the most, the boy said. And you're the one telling me you don't. Then he did the fastest thing his small, blue-lipped body had done all night. He didn't go up. He came down, ducked under the arm that grabbed a half-second too late, and put himself into the gap. No, the conduit let go. Yi-min got one hand on the back of the boy's blazer. He felt the fabric. He felt the small shoulder underneath it. And then the rupture blew outward with the force of decades of stored pressure. A wall of it, and it took Min-jun out of his grip. The way the blast door had taken Yesio, the way everything got taken from him, and threw Yi-min backward into the base of the stairs. The last thing his one good eye saw, before it whited out for good, was the boy in the gap, arms out, holding the shape of the broken part with his own body, buying the stairwell the half-second it needed to clear. Then white, then sound stretched thin, then nothing. He came back to air. That was the first wrong thing, and then he understood it wasn't wrong at all. The chamber was full of the whine of a dying machine, and up through the sealed stair, he could hear something he hadn't heard all night, which was people breathing without struggling for it. Real air, cold air. 400 pairs of lungs pulling in oxygen. No machine was skimming, because one lung of the great patient thing had ruptured, and reversed, and started tearing the rest of the system apart from the inside. He'd done it, it worked. Everybody up there breathed and didn't stop. The reversal had held because the rupture had been contained to a single point in the stairwell, and the single point in the stairwell had been contained by a boy. Yi-min crawled to the gap. He didn't need the sight to find him. The sight was gone, both eyes dark now, spent the price finally paid in full. He found him with his hands in the dark, in the place where the broken part had been, and he gathered up what the pressure had left, and he held it, and he made a sound he had never made in his entire life. No cynicism in it. No angle, no calculation, no better in bed, no members only, no accounting. Just a man holding a child who had stood in the broken part, so the man could live to make the air come back. The machine's voice came one more time, faint, threaded through the sound of its own collapse. Sentiment, it said, that's the flaw I couldn't design out of you. It made you inefficient. It made me different. Yi-min said into the dark, into the boy's hair. That's the whole thing you never got. You built a world that grows men like me, but it can't stop growing kids like him. His voice broke and he let it. And every single time, the kid is worth more than the whole machine. The voice didn't answer. Machines don't argue with math they can't do. Up above, faint through the stairwell, a woman's voice was calling a name into the crowd. over and over, threading between the sound of 400 people breathing. Minjun, Minjun, the mother who'd been fanning someone else's baby, looking for the son who'd walked away, to say thank you and never come back. Yi Min sat at the bottom of the sealed stair, blind now, holding the boy, listening to that name being called into air the boy had bought and would never breathe. And here is the thing about grief. When you're the man who built the coffins, it doesn't let you off. It doesn't say you did your best. It sits down next to you in the dark, and it makes you count. Yi Min counted every brochure, every shaved margin, every wall he'd made too thick to question, every seal he'd hidden behind pretty stone, every time he'd looked at a survival budget and seen his own retirement, every year he'd spent being exactly what the machine wanted. It's proof of concept. It's living argument that the world grows men who do the arithmetic and feel nothing. And then he counted Minjun. Just once, just the one, and the one outweighed all of it. He didn't cry the way you'd expect. He'd used up crying back in the snow. He just held the boy and rocked slightly, the way you do when your body is trying to comfort someone who's already past comforting. When he finally moved, it was because the machine's dying had changed pitch. And even blind, he could feel it in the floor. The great collapse spreading throat to throat across 6 shelters. The whole elegant decades-old theft coming apart because one contractor had finally refused the job. He couldn't see, but he'd never really needed his eyes for this. He'd been reading structures through walls his whole life, and now he read this one through his skin, through the tremor in the concrete, through the changing hum. The machine was dying, and when it finished, the men who thought they'd bought it, Choi and his unit with the weak West collar seal, Du Hyun who'd handed over the access card without looking, Yeseo who'd chosen the side of the door that closes, all of them sitting deep in their luxury waiting room, believing they'd survived on merit. We're going to discover that the thing keeping them comfortable had just torn itself apart. The door that closes only works if there's a machine behind it. Yi Min laid the boy down, gently in the place he'd chosen. He stood blind, swaying, and turned his dead eyes up the stairwell toward the breathing and the calling of a name. I'm going to tell her, he said to nobody. I'm going to go up there and find her and tell her what her son did. And then his hand found the axe by feel, closed around the familiar weight of it. Then I'm going to go find the people who taught me to build coffins, and I'm going to show them exactly where they fail. I can't see anymore, but I never needed to.